The first technique we selected is the pair shares. So what is pair share? Pair share, also called dialogue or a neighbor nudge. This activity is the quickest, easiest, and psychologically safe way which allow learners to participate. During a pair share, each learner turns to another person and engages in a short discussion about something that is topic related. With a pair share, learners don't have to worry about how they will sound in front of their peers, and they don't need to be concerned about whether or not they know the right answer. After all, the only person they will be talking with will be the person seated next to them. So what does a pair share do? A pair share helps learners to review information in an easy, quick, and low-risk way. Since pair shares can be done easily and quickly, it can be used as activity to review what have been discussed at the end of the shorter segment. So the first principle of the two fundamental training principles is integrated here, where it says that shorter segments of instruction are better than the longer ones. So here you can just allow them to be involved by just not taking too much time in enabling them to participate in the activity. Pair share also help learners to remember what they just heard and to connect what they just heard with what they already know. Since you allow them to have a moment to digest the information you've just imparted with them, and given also the fact that they are not pressured, it will allow their brain to think creatively and visualize the bigger picture by connecting their new knowledge from their previous knowledge. Pair share also help learners to connect with each other in order to build a safe learning community and to become more comfortable with interaction and active involvement in the learning. So by doing the pair share, you will create a situation where your students will become comfortable in interaction and active involvement in the learning, which is related to the second or one of the two fundamental training principle, which says that learners remember more when they are involved in the learning. So here you will allow them to participate actively, which helps them to remember more the topic discussed, and it will be stored in a long-term memory. What will happen when learners participate in a pair share? Expect to see them turn and talk to someone they are sitting next to, and to listen as the other person is talking. We'll expect them to become involved in a discussion about the topic. You can also expect them to feel more at ease with you, with each other, and the topic. You can also expect them to be more willing to ask questions since they are comfortable with the learning community or the learning environment. This will allow them to boost their confidence to ask questions. You can also expect them to look more awake, alert, and interested as you lecture, since they are more involved, not just physically but mentally. They will be more awake and mentally alert during your discussion. Regarding the materials to be used in this activity, extra materials are unnecessary, and as to the setup, special setup is unnecessary, and as to the group size, any size of group is okay. any number of members can do. Here are some tips for variation. Sit or stand. If learners have been sitting a while, direct them to stand before doing the pair share. By doing this, it will allow your learners to be more mentally awake before doing the activity. Number 2, triads are okay. So tell learners to do the activity in pairs or triads so that no one is left out. Number 3, talk or not. If you have the time or feel it is important enough, you can lead a short whole group discussion about the pair share responses. Ask for volunteers to tell their group what they discussed in pairs. To do this activity, processing or not is your call. So it's about you can do this by, it really depends on you on whether to integrate it or not. Hair pair share. Tell learners to pair up and figure out who has the shortest hair and who has the longest hair. Then say, short hair, ask a long hair a question about what you just learned. If long hair can answer the question, give him or her a thumbs up. Or long hair, ask short hair to explain a term you just learned. If correct, give him a high five. Civet, be cautious about using characteristics that simply gender, ethnicity, or cultural biases or that could be make people uncomfortable, such as weight or size. So by doing this activity, you will allow them to be more stimulated during the activity, but you have to be careful using characteristics or characteristic, because you might offend someone or you may make people uncomfortable during the activity. The next one is use shoes. So instead of using hair, tell pairs to discover who has the newest or oldest shoes, the longest or shortest middle name, the greater or fewer number of siblings, or anything else that will add a note of levity and community building while reviewing the information. So here are some alternatives to the hair pair share suggested, so they can be more feel comfortable in the community or learning environment. The last one is pair share plus one. Combine a pair share with another 60-second activity to deepen the learning. For example, after doing a pair share, learners may do a shout out with a few of them stating aloud what they said to their partners, or they might do a think and write, jotting down what they learned from the pair share, reading through all the activities in part 1 so that you can choose also by doing this pair share plus one, you will add another activity or 60-second activity or 1-minute activity that will help them to digest more the discussion you've just imparted to them. Then so here we can see that the fundamental training principles are integrated or related in the pair share. The short segments of instruction are better than longer ones, which is integrated in the pair share, and the learners remember more when they are involved in the learning. So we can all say that in doing pair share, the learners are more involved in their learning process. They will be the one who discuss the learnings they've acquired from the discussion and making questions and everything related to the topic that will help them to remember more the topics and discussions. So that's all.
The second technique we choose is the think and write. According to David McCullough, writing is thinking. To write well is to think clearly. What most students don't realize is that it's often not actually the writing that is difficult. It's the thinking behind the writing. Writing enables us to clarify and communicate our thoughts. While writing, you are forcing yourself to think critically and exercise parts of your brain that are typically on autopilot. As Einstein once said, if you can explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. In attempting to formulate a written piece, you are going through the exercise of transforming vague ideas into clarified concepts externally but also internally. Writing and thinking are two keys in powerful thought. Critical thinking leads to good writing, which leads to clear thinking, and so on. By improving your writing, you are also improving your ability to think. With the help of the 10-minute trainer, the Think and Write activity helps learners to take a moment to think about what they have learned and then write down their thoughts, as per instructions. The Think and Write is more introspective than other 60-second activities because learners quietly reflect upon what they've learned. Whatever you choose to call it, use it to help learners mentally absorb the training material. So then, the question then becomes, what does a Think and Write do? With 1 minute of quiet reflection and writing, learners can deepen their own understanding of the concepts learned, link what they are learning with what they already know, experience a moment of quiet energy as they reflect on what they've learned, discover what they may still have a question about, relax and take a break from interacting with other learners, begin to internalize the information they are learning, move the information more into long-term memory. So here's the 10 Think and Write activities. First, think about the material we've just covered. Write one sentence that summarizes this information. Number 2, think about what you've just learned. If you had to explain the main idea to someone else, what would you say? Write your explanation in a sentence or two. Number 3, think about how you can use this information. Jot down or 3 ways you could apply what you've learned. Number 4, think about a question you still have concerning this information. Write your question on an index card and pass it up. If you don't have a question, look over these terms, choose one and write a sentence defining it. Number 6, think about an action plan for using this information. Write down your action plan. If you have time, quietly share it with the person next to you. 7, point to a wall chart titled Test Questions. If you had to create a test about the material you've learned, what would be a test question you would include? Write it down on a post-it note and stick it on the wall chart. Number 8, on an index card, write down a test question related to this material. Write the answers to the questions in the back of the card. Now exchange cards with someone next to you, making sure the question side is up. Write the answer to the question you just received and then check the back of the card to see whether your answer is correct. Number 9, who are 3 people you could share this information with? Jot down their names and what you would tell them on your handout. Number 10, think about a problem related to this topic. Jot it down in a sentence or 2. Later, you ask for a few volunteers to share written problems with us, and we brainstorm some solutions. Here are also the tips and variations of Think and Write. First is, change the time. Observe the group. If most learners finish before the minute is up, stop the activity. If most are still writing when the minute is up, give them additional time to finish. Second, add a pair share. If desired, follow the Think and Write with a pair share so that learners can quietly listen to each other's ideas. Third, from noisy to quiet. Use a Think and Write to quiet the group after a physically active energy activity. Fourth, sit and stretch. Direct learners to stretch while seated before doing the activity. Lastly, stand and stretch. Have learners stand and stretch while thinking and then sit back down to write. With all the tips and variations, writers will have a good written piece.
So the next technique that our group has chosen was the celebration. So what is celebration? A celebration is a closing activity that ends the training on a positive note, often with a burst of energy and enthusiasm. Like a connection activity at the beginning of the training, a celebration connects learners to each other once again at the end of the training. So the celebration ensures the training participants leave feeling good about what they have learned and the learning community they shared. So the celebration should be the last thing learners do before they leave the training room. So if the trainer includes a training evaluation or final comments, the trainer should do it before the celebration activity. Why? Because the last minute or so training is a powerful time to reinforce both the learning and the learning community. When participants leave feeling good about themselves and the learning experience, they will seek out more of the same. The probability that they will become lifelong learners increases because of the positive feeling they have been when they walk out the door. So what does celebration do? With a 60-second celebration, the trainer can create a burst of energy and a connection, strengthen the learning community of the group and reconnect learners to each other, to the topic and to the trainer, which is especially important if group members work together, or they will have more training days in front of them, which will help them enjoy the activities as they can share and learn from the others. Reminding the learners of what they have learned that encourage them to make a commitment to use what they have learned, it is related to the two fundamental principles of 10-minute trainer. The second principle states, learners remember more when they are involved in learning, which will help the students to remember more of what they have learned as they can share and learn new things from the others with positive vibes and feeling good, because it will end up with a upbeat, positive, and memorable note. And in order for learners to remember more of what the trainer teach them, the trainer should space activities throughout the training. Shorter, more frequent activities are better than the fewer, longer ones. The more that you involve your learners in the training, the more they will remember. The 10 celebration. Celebration number 1. Give a high five to those in your table, the people sitting next to you, to all those in your row. Follow this with a round of applause for all. Note, a high five is a clap in the air with each learner in a pair using one hand to clap her partner's hand. Celebration number 2. Tell your group one thing you enjoy about working together, then give each other a high 10. Follow this with a round of applause for all. Note, a high 10 is a high five done with the learner's 2 hand clapping, another learner's 2 hand in the air. Celebration number 3. Pass out individual noisemakers as training souvenirs. Say one or more of the following. Sound your noisemaker if you enjoy the training. Sound a noisemaker if you learn at least 6 that you didn't know before. Make noise if you can share what you have learned with the other colleagues. Make noise if you can use what you learned. Sound your noisemaker if you had fun today. Celebration number 4. Use a soft rubber ball and encourage learners to catch, speak, and quickly toss it to someone else. Say, when the ball is tossed your way, quickly tell us a word or phrase that sums up your feelings about the training. Then toss the ball to someone else. Celebration number 5. On a post-it note, write a thank you or compliment for the person on your right. Stick the note on his or her arm, then give everyone a round of applause. Celebration number 6. On an index card, write a phrase of encouragement or a compliment for the person on your left. Hand that person that card and shake his hand. Celebration number 7. On the count of 3, let's all shout, "Good going, grow." End with a round of applause for all. Choose a phrase to shout at that is relevant to your training and your audience. Celebration number 8. Stand and find someone to pair up with. Standing triads are okay too. Tell this person what the best part of the training was for you, then give each other a handshake. Celebration number 9. Walk around the room and give at least 6 people a smile, a verbal farewell, and a high five. Follow this with a round of applause for all. Celebration number 10. Pass out individual training souvenirs. Say, "Hold up your souvenir." This is to remind that you make a difference in the lives of those you live and work with. It's also a reminder of you, what you learned today. Then end up with a round of applause for all. And that is all. Thank you.
To wrap it up, reinforce, apply, and practice, we selected the each one teach one. What is each one teach one? This activity gives learners the opportunity to teach and coach each other. Learners pair up and teach each other what they just learned. Give each other feedback. Practice a skill together. Coach each other as they practice. And provide mutual support by encouraging each other. The best way for a learner to reinforce, apply, and practice any new skills is to teach it to someone else. In his book, Illusions, Richard Bach tells us we master what we teach. When participants teach each other, they begin to master the materials. These principles may relate to the shorter segments of instruction. This is a better than the longer ones, and learners remember more when they are involved in the learning. What does each one teach one do? With each one teach one, expect to see learners demonstrate a new skills. Give each other feedback about how well they are modeling the skills. This will help you improve your skills in teaching or explaining the ideas you know. Coach each other as they practice the new skills. Discuss what they learned. Ask each other questions. Encourage each other. Provide mutual support for ongoing learning. Just for example, in peer mentoring, me, as a third-year college, we teach the second-year student about the subject that we already take. For them to learn also what we have learned. Each one teach one instruction. Tell participants they will have an opportunity to practice skills or teach each other what they just learned in the training. Direct them to form standing pairs. If there is an oath of participants, one pair can become a triad. One person in the pair is the learner. The other person is the coach. The learner demonstrates the new skill while explaining it to the coach. The coach gives the learner positive feedback, encouragement, and any help that she may need. The participants change rules. They practice the demonstration coaching session again. If there is no skill to practice, pairs can take turn teaching each other training concepts, explaining the concept in their own words, or discussing way to use the information in real life situation. And the activity will partners giving each other a round of applause. Process the activity with a few quick questions for the whole group. What was the most important things you learned? How did you feel about your skills? What was helpful about having a coach? What other question came up during the activity? Each one teach one is a concept that brings with a lot of mental satisfaction. If you are involved in teaching someone, or even if you are prompting the concept of spreading the awareness, The idea of working for a social cause gives you an immense sense of satisfaction and peace of mind. You can also offer that to teach other or bring people who wants to learn. You can motivate some others who have the skills to do this but just need a boost. You can also contribute materials or space for teaching, which also gives a great sense of satisfaction towards a noble cause. The teacher and the taught will get immense satisfaction with the kind of services they are offering.
Hi guys, so the next technique that we chose is the metaphor magic. So without further ado, let's get started. So what is metaphor magic? Metaphor magic is an activity that uses the power of metaphors and analogies to capture the essence of a training concept. Metaphors and analogies are phrases that compare one thing and another thing that is unlike the first. Metaphors are right brain training tools because they create mental images that instantly communicate concepts without the need for long explanation. For example, sometimes the trainer feels as though they are going against the grain, trudging uphill, spoon-feeding their learners with the odds stuck against them. Other times they feel as though they are a beacon in the night, making headway going with the flow, capturing the hearts of their learners, and turning them onto the learning. All these phrases are metaphors, strung together to show that most cultures embed metaphors into everyday language.
Colorful phrases, sayings, comparisons, idioms, and the like are all metaphors. Each language has its own vivid metaphors that people use in their everyday lives. Why? Because metaphors save time. A mental picture can get the point across much more quickly than a lengthy explanation can. For example, consider these American metaphors. It's raining cats and dogs. It means it's raining very hard. She's one brick shy of a full load. It means she lacks intelligence. He thinks he's the cat's meow. It means he thinks very high of himself. It's on the tip of my tongue. It means I almost remember it. She's burning the candle at both ends. It means she's working too hard. It happens once in a blue moon. It means it happens only occasionally. He's as blind as bat. It means he's really short-sighted. And lastly, it hit me like a bolt out of the blue. It means suddenly I understood. In terms of training, we don't have to use culturally biased metaphors. Ordinary household objects, things found in nature, items in wallet or handbag, or any everyday thing or experience can become a metaphor for a training concept.
So what does metaphor magic do? So when we use metaphors, of course, we create mental images that stick in a learner's mind. The image is an almost instantaneous understanding of something that might take paragraphs to explain otherwise. Training without using metaphors is like traveling by car, from driving point A through points B, C, D, and so on to reach point Z. Using metaphors while training is like traveling by plane, from point A to point Z without having to waste time going through all the other points along the way. This is an example of using a metaphor to explain a concept. A note for language experts. We know already that the differences between metaphors and analogies, or metaphors and similes, right? But for the sake of this book and the metaphor magic activity, we will refer to them all as variation of the same right brain training method, that is, using comparisons and vivid mental imagery to deepen the learner's conceptual understanding of what we are teaching.
With metaphors, of course, learners can link new learning to vivid mental images, to increase long-term memory of important concepts, to think and remember in creative and unique ways, to understand the essence of a concept more quickly and more deeply, to make complicated concepts simple to grasp, to use higher-order thinking skills like analysis, evaluation, or synthesis, and lastly, to learn faster and remember more.
In this activity, we need a chart tablet and stand, or an overhead projector and transparencies, or anything we can write on so that the learners will be able to see. A broad deep color felt pens, or at least 2 in dark colors. One chart paper posted where everyone can see it entitled, for example, training concept is like a
blah 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 because blah blah blah, depending upon the metaphor strategy we choose. Learners may need some of the following items like one small bag or box per table group containing small household objects or toys, a half dozen larger household objects, blank chart paper, overhead transparencies of one sheet of each per table group, color for broad tip felt pens or transparency pens for 3 or 4 per table group. So to set things up, we need to place the chart stand and tablet where everyone can see them, and ask for a volunteer to write on the chart for you. Learners should be seated in small table groups so that they can work together. And also, learners may also need physical space in which to move around. For the group size, any size group is fine. And for the time, 5 minutes will do, but for the 10-minute version, they must increase the number of metaphors each small group needs to create, or do one of the variations. Another option is to increase the processing time and make sure that all of the groups get a chance to share their metaphors.
And for the instructions, first, ask the whole group to state the names of 5 to 6 household objects from any room, including the garage. Print this in list format down one side of a chart paper or overhead transparency, then direct the whole group to state 5 to 6 training concepts they have learned. Print this and this down the other side of the chart or transparency. Post the chart paper or transparency where it is visible to everyone. Second, direct learners' attention to the chart paper on which is printed. For example, the training concept is like a blah 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 because blah blah blah. Tell learners to work in small groups to finish a sentence using both list of objects and training concepts. Direct them to create 3 metaphors using one concept and one object from the list. They can print their ideas on chart paper or simply be ready to report their metaphors to the whole group. Give them about 3 minutes to make up their sentences. And lastly, ask for volunteers to report a few of their metaphors to the whole group. Applaud those who do so.
We can correlate this technique from the 10-minute trainer principle, in which shorter segments of instructions are better than longer ones. As what we have observed, this game takes only 5 to 10 minutes, and from that short duration of time, learners were able to develop their analytical skills and creativity on how they could link or relate the concepts they have learned into the objects around them. By that, learners will be able to grasp and recall their learnings easily. The second principle is that learners remember more when they are involved in the learning. Of course, it is really important to catch the attention of the learners, right? And it is by engaging them actively from the set activities. It will help them enjoy the event and at the same time develop their creativity. As a student, the metaphor magic is a great tool or technique for me because I myself experienced that already. I sometimes leak the concepts from the object around me so that during the examinations or for future purposes, I'll be able to recall and easily remember the important concepts.